Hello, everyone. We are back with another episode of Hindsight. When you know better, you do better. My name is Akil Sanders, and I am here with the wonderful and illustrious and super smart Dr. Jennifer Sarrett. Well, first, how are you,
Hmm.
Dr. Sarrett?
I'm
How you
doing
been
pretty
lately?
good. I've been all right. I've been working on my consultancy, disruptive inclusion. I got a
Okay.
strategist, and she's amazing. And so, yeah, trying to focus on that and making it day to day. How about you?
No, just trying to. I got a lot of things on my plate. We're going on family vacation in a couple of weeks. I
Mhm.
cannot wait for that. Um, I have a big surgery coming up.
Mhm.
That's going to be very interesting. Thinking about documenting it,
Ooh, yes,
documenting the
do.
surgery
Ooh, and
all
then
the
I
way
can come in
through
and talk
to
about
a
medical
report.
ethics
Yeah, you can. You
and
can.
how all
Hopefully,
your
have a month
doctors
build
fucked
into
up.
that.
Just kidding.
Yeah, nah, that's we're not even gonna talk about it. But yeah, so good. Like we spoke about in the previous episode, just processing current times,
Mhm. Mhm.
um, and how heavy a lot of the current events are on the psyche of people who are empaths by nature,
Yeah.
and how seeing people disappeared off the streets, seeing people that don't understand um, what what is happening to them day to day via our government
Right.
and how it's going to affect them down the road, which I think is the importance of what we're doing here with hindsight, because I think understanding, like we've talked about in the past, and we've forged this bond over this tenet and this idea that understanding history will help you
Mhm.
to understand what's going on and help you make decisions today.
Exactly.
So that's why we to um, create this second iteration of Hindsight, the podcast, that will be hosted on all different platforms. So, look for us, like, subscribe, give us a shout out, send us a message.
Mhm.
We are open to any sort of dialogue that anybody would like. Give us ideas of things to talk about. We'd appreciate it all.
All of it.
Um, Today, what I want to talk about though, is the through lines from Reconstruction
Mm.
to many people say that the Civil Rights era was the second coming of Reconstruction, um, and obviously the first Reconstruction was the ending of slavery,
Mhm.
beginning with the Emancipation Proclamation, 1865, and it lasted for about 12 years, where the South primarily um,
Rose again?
gave. Pardon me? What
The
did you
South
say?
rose again?
The South, the South. Well, they did rise again, but for about 12 years, they were suppressed. They were suppressed for about 12 years because after um, after the Civil War was won by the North, and then after Lincoln was assassinated, there were federal troops that remained in the South for about 1877,
Mm.
which helped to enact um, the different laws and things that came about during that time frame that allowed blacks to vote,
Mhm.
blacks to take office. And since there was such a large population of formerly enslaved people, blacks were actually gaining ground politically, um, because there were so many people able to vote. Well, in 1877, that all came to a screeching halt
Mm.
with the Great Compromise of 1877, where Rutherford B. Hayes basically made a deal with the Southern states that they would vote for him if he removed all the federal troops from the South. Well, he won and he followed through on his promise. Well, that enacted about 80 years of, well, I mean, we could probably say 100 years
Yeah.
of Jim Crow. Um, Jim Crow officially ended in 1865 with the Voting Rights Act, but the residue of Jim Crow lasts till today.
Yeah.
All right, so the compromise, the great compromise, where Rutherford B. Hayes pulls the federal troops out of the South, and this creates an environment where white rage against
Mm.
formerly enslaved Americans, Black Americans, was able to go unchecked for another 80, 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
This is when all of the lynchings became a thing. This is when the summer of 1919, the Red Summer of 1919, where entire towns were burned down. Um, just state sanctioned violence and state sanctioned disenfranchisement of an entire class of people who were stolen from Africa, brought to America. All of their labor stolen from them. Um, and what we see today, have you seen? Can you give me any examples maybe that you've recognized that's going on today that may align with the ending of Reconstruction that you could think of?
Prisons.
Prisons? Absolutely.
Prison labor.
Absolutely.
Prison labor primarily.
One of the first things that they did was make being Black illegal.
Right.
The Black Codes. Black Codes came about, and what that did was when the 13th Amendment was added to the Constitution, it had the but clause in it, where you you couldn't be enslaved unless you were a criminal. So what did they do? They criminalized everything that Black people would do. So you would get, there were so many vagrancy laws. So if you were unemployed, you could be considered a criminal.
Right.
Well, if you couldn't get employment because you were Black, how do you not be a criminal? So what they would do is they would lock you up. They would put you on a chain gang, and then the industry of convict leasing came about. So this is just slavery in another name. And there's a great book called Slavery by Another Name that you can read. So basically, being Black was criminalized as a part of what's going, what happened post Reconstruction. Well, we can go through. So I have kind of a timeline of some things that happen, and I have some things that line up. And what they say is, I love this term. I heard this term a while back, and I use it all the time now because it's so apropos in today's climate. History doesn't always repeat itself, but it rhymes.
Oh, yeah, I
Right.
love that.
So
That's great.
right?
Yeah.
So we understand that what has happened, it may not be happening exactly the same way, but it's going to have a similar effect as it had the first time, which is why you do it again. Like when you play sports, when you're in football or basketball and they run plays week to week, well, sometimes what they'll do is they'll run a similar play and they'll variate that play for the next week, even though it looks the same. And the next week, it's still going to look the same, but it's going to have a little wrinkle in it so that it has the same results, because you can't repeat the same thing over and over and over again because people know how to defend that. So the same thing goes with history and things that are going on politically to garner power for the ruling class. So from the Federal Retreat, 1877, that's when the Federal Troops were withdrawn. So that could line up today in 2013, where Shelby County versus Eric Holder, when they gutted the Voting Rights Act, right? So pre-clearance provisions, removing proactive federal oversight changes to state election laws, and it allowed the Department of Justice's capacity to monitor voting discrimination be reduced, shifting the burden to individuals to sue after harm occurs. So now our government has removed themselves from protecting the people and left it up to the people to protect their own, which is one of the most crucial rights there is, which is voting.
Which and
And I
then
always say,
also,
like,
like, being a person that will then bring a lawsuit takes a lot of resources that people most
absolutely,
likely to be left out of the process of voting often do not have access to.
absolutely. So that automatically cuts out a lot of people from the voting
Mhm,
rolls.
mhm.
The next up, the Supreme Court narrowing civil rights protection. So in 1877 to 1900, civil rights cases in 1883 struck down the first Civil Rights Act of 1875, which limited federal authority over private acts of discrimination. So then in 1896, everybody has heard of Plessy versus Ferguson,
Yeah.
which legalized separate but equal,
Mhm.
which actually cemented Jim Crow segregation. Now, Plessy was essentially a white man. He walked around, he looked as white as everyone else, but he was what was called back then, which is probably a derogatory term today, but it was considered an octoroon. He was 1/8
Mhm.
black. I think he had a black grandparent or a great grandparent or something like that. So they considered him by the one drop rule to be black. So that's what basically disenfranchised you from society was that one drop rule of being black. So you come forward today and you trace that through line to today, something like Students for Fair Admissions to
Mm,
Harvard in 2023 effectively ended race conscious affirmative action in college admissions.
mhm.
So we all know that when you have resources and you come from resources, it's easier to get more resources and to be able to get higher education
Yep.
and have better things in life and better outcomes in life because you come from resources and you have resources
Mhm.
to utilize. Um, well, if you don't use race conscious affirmative action because people were eliminated from resources through race consciousness
Mhm.
on purpose. And how do you move forward and don't look at what the harm was done and fix it by saying the harm was done to black people?
Yeah.
Then we must try to repair them today with the same thing that we used to harm them.
Yeah.
Kind of like vaccines, right?
Yeah.
You take a little bit of
Absolutely.
that
Yeah.
medicine and use it the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And I think,
also,
Akil,
there's another.
this makes me think of school choice.
Oh my goodness, people. It's so funny because now that I have kids, and we had to go through the whole process of finding out schools, and you understand school choice is nothing but a money grab for rich
Oh,
people.
hell yeah, it is. And it's
It's
and
nothing
a
but
neo-segregationist move.
you said what
A
now?
neo-segregationist
Uh,
move.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because if it's a private schools don't have to let anybody they don't want to let in,
Mm-mm. Including disabled
and they don't.
students.
Yeah, they don't have to say it's because you're black or disabled. They just say, well, we don't want you here.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, they're getting taxpayer funding to offset the cost
Mhm.
of private school. Um, and the cost of private school is usually so expensive that the people who actually are impoverished enough to not go there aren't able to cover the rest of the cost. So basically, you're just giving a coupon to a rich person who has already decided to pay for
Mhm.
their child's education. So it's just a shift in how money um, is shifted to the upper 1%
Yeah.
or 2% or 5% or whatever
Yeah.
the rich folks. There's another case that was called Brunovich versus the Democratic National Committee. This narrowed the scope of the Voting Rights Act, Section 2, making it harder to challenge discriminatory voting rules. So now you can't say, okay, this thing has happened to us as a whole in this district. This district is primarily black. Now you have to prove that it was because the district was black that they discriminated against the voters in that district. And most racists don't go out. Most racists, what I find, um, they hate being called a
Oh,
racist
for sure.
more than they hate the racist behaviors that they do. They love the racism. They just don't like being called a racist.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't go out and try to put on Front Street that they're being racist. And so it makes it kind of hard when the only description of being racist is using epithets,
Yeah.
and being very, very specific. Um,
Well, and
so
it's also circular that,
when
like, in order to bring this charge of racist discrimination, then you have to prove that it's racist. But in order to prove that it's racist, you need to have this charge accepted. So it's just like
correct,
snake eating its
correct,
own
and
tail.
it's a game, and they know exactly what they're doing, and they're not being honest about it.
Yeah,
There's zero integrity in any of it because they don't want to fix the problem.
right.
They want the problem to exist because it gives them power.
Mm-hmm.
It allows them to monetize that power and monetize that impoverished area. Okay, so basically we were talking about I was talking about the different phases that we're in. So the next is state reassertion of control, which in 1877 the states regained near total control over elections, education, and law enforcement without federal oversight. Southern legislators passed voter suppression measures, your poll tax, your literacy test, tailored to disenfranchised black citizens. So, can you name some famous um, poll taxes or tests that
Oh, I've seen some examples of these quote unquote literacy
yeah,
tests, and they're impossible. It's like very detailed questions about the minutia of the
correct,
Constitution or like complicated math
yeah,
problems.
or they used to have the how many jelly beans in a jar, or how many
Yes,
how many
yes.
bubbles are in a bar of soap, things that are
Yeah.
impossible to do, um, and also you know that the grandfather clause. You know where that arrives from? You
Mm-hmm.
can't vote. Your grandfather
Yeah.
voted. Well, most people
Oh, did
enslaved that were from direct descendants of one generation of the enslaved people obviously had grandfathers that could not vote. So
Mm-hmm.
there was very and back then it was really to the point, and with states' rights, which states' rights is just another way to say, we in the South want to be able to discriminate against black folks. We
Exactly.
see what's going on today with the gerrymandering in Texas, where they're trying to, they got all these weird districts, and they're trying to carve out these weird districts to increase representation of the minority of people. Um,
Yeah.
which is awful. Um, but today we can look and it says, and some of the instances that compared to that in 1877, states have passed strict voter ID laws, which voter ID laws in
Mm-hmm.
general, it's really interesting because so when you go to a state school, and you get a state ID from that school, that is not considered a valid ID, but you can have a gun license, and that is considered a valid ID. And the way that they
We actually I push back because I'm a poll worker.
Mhm.
State in Georgia at least, you can use your state university ID. You cannot use a private university
Okay,
ID.
yeah. So, but some states that's different though, right? In some
Probably. I
states
don't know.
I think in some states that is different. I think Georgia's more of a purple state anyways. Even though our
Yeah.
local
Yeah. Fair.
legislation, our state legislation is more red. Overall politics, obviously, which is why we have two Democratic senators and a Republican governor, because we are purple now. Is that going to hold up over time? I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how this next governor's race goes
Right.
too.
Mm-hmm.
But so the states have passed strict voter ID laws, reduced early voting days, purged voter rolls, changes disproportionately impacting minorities and young voters. So the reduced early voting days, that's really difficult because people in minority communities typically have jobs that don't allow them to take off and go and vote. So they have less
Yeah.
opportunity to go and vote, whereas people that are in more well-to-do neighborhoods have jobs or own the companies, and they're able to take off and vote, or they're more liberal with how they vote, so they allow their people to vote much easier. State sovereignty arguments have also been used to limit federal oversight in areas like police reform, education curriculum, and reproductive rights. And we know we are dealing with that hand over fist right now because obviously there's been as we speak, Washington D.C. has been taken over. The state, the city police have been taken over by the federal government. Um, education curriculum. I mean,
And they're talking about expanding that to other.
You said that. Say that again.
They're talking about expanding that federal
So
takeover of the local police in other states and cities.
absolutely. But it's really odd because the other states that they're talking about, they aren't red states. They're typically blue states with blue governors and or blue states with black mayors, and as they're in the city. So if you think about your Baltimores, your Chicago's,
Yeah.
your LA's, your New Yorks, all of those, outside of Eric Adams in New York, which I don't think he's not gonna last much longer. I think. But yeah, and then we have education curriculum, which clearly is being assaulted right now because the Wrestling Federation leading lady Linda McMahon, who doesn't know the difference between AI and steak sauce, um, is heading is heading up is heading up for the
It wasn't just one time either. You did it more than once.
yeah, absolutely doesn't even know how to learn the lessons. Um, so
Yeah.
so we are in trouble. We are in the sunken place right now. Um, So number four,
Yes.
shift in federal priorities. So in 1877, the federal government pivoted toward economic growth, westward expansion, and industrialization, deprior- deprioritizing racial justice. And Reconstruction programs were defunded or dismantled. What does that sound like now?
Oh my God. Everything, defunding everything that helps anybody.
Absolutely, like the defund, like they were they were going after everything. They started out like they started out with affirmative action back in the 80s and the 90s, and they were it didn't quite stick. Like it just wasn't working. And then they move up. I'm trying to think what was the early 2000s, but I know they got to CRT, and CRT
Oh yeah.
was really abstract, but they really wanted their people to be afraid of it, but they just couldn't get it to sink in because when people were asked what CRT is, they didn't know what CRT is, so it's kind of hard to believe in the boogeyman when they don't even know what the boogeyman is. And then they came to the word woke, and woke somehow went from being a lyric in an old song telling black people just be aware of your surroundings because these people crazy out here in these streets because of all the rollback that's been done during Jim Crow. Be woke. Make sure you stay aware and do not fall asleep in the wrong place because you might die. So being woke from to being meaning that some really sensitive and fragile white people that did not want to hear about the history of their country and their people thought that that was somehow a slight to them. And then they did it on DEI.
Also, like, I never understood why you would want to be asleep.
Yeah, yeah. It was so. I mean, the way that they did that. I mean, it was masterful. The kids to pulling that off and to making being woke
Yeah.
some hard. I mean, they got in Florida. They got laws, anti-woke laws, meaning you need to be asleep while you in our country, our state, which is really weird. And then they landed on DEI, which really hurt us because just the letters alone, diversity, equity, and inclusion don't seem very harmful to me. They seem like something that everybody wants or everybody should want. I mean, life would be very boring if we didn't have diversity. Um,
Hell yeah.
Often.
And, I don't know if you read my AJC article,
100%. And
but the whole
I was going to get to that because I absolutely read.
oh,
Oh, I absolutely read it. And I've been meaning to respond to you, but I felt like I would respond to you face to face. I absolutely read it, and I'd like to bring it up because I wanted to take notes on it. I haven't had a chance to take notes on it, and maybe we can discuss it later. Because yeah, I
okay.
agree with a lot of it. I have some different hot takes on it as well. So yeah, no, absolutely. Um, uh, so 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 moving forward today, when we talk about Reconstruction programs being defunded or dismantled, so some of the things that rhyme with that time in 1877 are political focus has shifted towards economic competition, foreign policy,
Mm,
and culture wars rather than
mm.
proactive civil rights expansion. You know, the culture wars one is, I mean, they do such a good job. I mean, I would imagine in like 3 months from now, we're going to go to war about saying Merry Christmas once again because this is an annual,
Oh yeah,
it is an annual war that I can set my watch to that we will
exactly.
not be allowed to say Merry Christmas anymore. And if you say Happy Holidays, you are a woke individual and a horrible
Yeah,
human being.
divisive, hate our country.
Hate America. America says Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Absolutely. Uh, and then the federal rights enforcement agencies like EEOC face staffing and funding shortfalls. Now we know what has been done in the government in the first 7 months of this new administration. There's an estimate that
Hmm.
says 350,000 Black women have lost their jobs in the last 7 months because one of the most solid employers for Black women, which is which as a subgroup is the most educated subgroup of people in the country, is the government. And they work for
Mm,
agencies like EEOC. Well, when they start to take the funding away from that, and allowing companies to, contractors and companies to discriminate freely because there is no check from the government saying you're not going to get contracts with us unless you provide equitable employment for your employees. Uh, that's a problem moving forward, right? Um,
yeah, absolutely.
so let's go on to the next one. Judicial and legislative endorsement of colorblind doctrine. Never believed in colorblind doctrine because I think being colorblind is
Well,
really a stupid way to think about things. Because
I think it
well,
is.
it's an actual disability, correct? Being colorblind.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
So so for people who actually do stop at uh, the stoplight when it's red, and they do slow down
Yeah.
yellow, and they do go when it's green. It is impossible for you to be colorblind when it comes to cultural things, right? So in
Hmm.
1877, so early 1900s, courts claimed the Constitution was colorblind, but interpreted this to mean no special protection
No.
for free people, erasing the original intent of the Reconstruction Amendments. So how can you be colorblind as a person writing the Constitution? Which I think we need a new Constitution, anyways, because the people who wrote the
Yeah.
Constitution weren't being real with themselves. To
No.
all men are created equal, while you own men, it's just an odd thing.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It was a different definition of what a human is or isn't. It's if you can own a man, that means that man is not a man,
Correct.
right? It's something else. It's a property for one, but also totally leaves out women,
Correct.
and so it's like and leaves out even white men who don't own land.
Correct. Correct. So all men are not created equal, because if you don't own land, then you aren't equal to the men who own land. Um, so moving forward, you got the Supreme Court. So today you got the Supreme Court rulings now frame many race conscious remedies as unconstitutional, often citing the need for equal treatment while ignoring structural inequality. So basically, I've hurt you, and then when I ask for repair or I ask for treatment for being hurt, you say it's unfair because you're not getting the same thing I'm getting, even though I'm the one that's harmed. That's like me breaking my leg
Right.
and someone else saying, well, I deserve a cast too, just because you got a cast.
Yeah.
Well, your arm's not broken.
Yeah.
Why do you need a cast? You know, it's just it's insanity, right? So the colorblind reading the
Yeah.
14th Amendment has been used to strike down programs meant to address racial disparity. So instead of actually getting rid of the racism, they're getting rid of the way that we define racism. That's why so many people can
Mhm.
talk about how I always find it funny when I might call something out, like especially if you're on social media and you're in the comments and you say, "Well, that's just racist," and they're like, "You're the racist
Yeah.
for calling it out." Like,
Yeah.
well, that's not how that works. Like words have definitions and
No.
meanings, and just because you have identified something as being racist doesn't make you racist. But that's what they do with words. They do whatever they want with words,
Hmm.
just like woke and DEI,
Yeah.
CRT, and I mean, that's what they do. Um, so let's move on to the next one. So the rise of localized resistance to federal civil rights. So in 18,
Mm.
white supremacist groups like the KKK operated with impunity, often working in tandem with local law enforcement. Often not working in tandem, just being law enforcement. Um, home rule,
Exactly.
like right, you know what I'm saying? Like home.
That Venn diagram's a circle.
You said what?
That Venn diagram's a circle.
100%. Like that. Like that's not tandem. That just is. You know. Home rule became a rallying cry for undoing Reconstruction reforms. So I always often wonder, like throughout history, you have these freedom fighting groups like the Black Panthers and just other different, very liberal groups. Well, the Black Panthers were more of a social organization
Hmm.
believed in protecting communities of color and feeding children and educating the children because they weren't being allowed access to society's better things and food programs, things like that, and resources. Well, they no longer exist, but you know who does still exist? The Klan. The Klan still
Yeah.
exists to this day, and
Exactly.
they don't walk around with their pointy hoods on now. Now they wear suits and they have podcasts, um, and
Suits or uniforms and
they have
badges.
badges that say ICE on them nowadays.
Yeah.
They call themselves the Proud Boys, the Three Percenters. They fly flags like "Don't tread on me." Um, really
Mm.
odd for an organization that's been around well over 150 years. Nobody's treading on you, bro. You're allowed to exist and do your
Yeah.
thing.
It's the same.
Do your thing. I mean, we got postcards of people at lynchings for 8
Hmm.
years of Klans members with them in them, and their offspring and descendants are walking amongst us today, and there was zero
Yeah.
accountability for those people. So to bring it
Zero.
forward, we have states and localities are resisting federal diversity and inclusion initiatives, banning certain historical teachings, and passing anti-CRT laws. What is the CRT? I always
Hmm.
love it when you have the people out there with the mic and they're like, "So what is CRT?" And they're like, "Uh, I don't know, but it's bad.
It's a divisive,
It's divisive and
racist,
it's racist."
and how is that?
And like, no, it's just a college course. Um,
Yeah.
In some states, legislatures actively defy federal civil rights guidance on LGBTQ plus protection, policing reforms, and education access. So, these notes, it says the biggest parallel is that in both eras, federal retreat created a legal vacuum that states filled, often to restrict the rights of marginalized groups, and the Supreme Court validated much of this retrenchment, which is exactly what we see happening today. I
Hmm.
think right now we are going through and experiencing the ending of the civil rights reconstruction that lasted for 50 years.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what's scary is we know what came about with Jim Crow and how violent Jim Crow was moving forward. I don't think that it will be possible to get to that point in America. I think it's a last grasp. I think there's going to be a lot of pain
Yeah.
that goes along, especially the next 4 years, the next 8 years, however long this lasts. Because I mean, we are literally in the middle of a right wing fever dream, and
Yep.
and the entire system is rigged currently. And I don't think they have any plans of going back to the way it was. So when people talk about 2026, I don't think 2026 is really going to be what people think it's going to be. I think it's all rigged, and I think we're gonna
Mm.
find out. But I also think it's gonna hurt a lot of people along the way. That don't
Yeah.
understand how it's gonna hurt them, because just because people that look like you have power don't mean they care about you, and that
You
you're exactly that you're gonna get
That's the biggest con in the world is that rich people, white rich people care about white poor people.
yeah, it's like, and the reason why they get rid of education is so that poor white people don't know how they're being.
Exactly.
That's why they went off. Poor white people went off to the Civil War to fight for rich white
Yeah.
people to have enslaved people that had jobs that they could be working and gaining a wage.
Hmm.
Instead, slavery is
Exactly.
undercutting poor white people's ability to leverage their abilities to do the jobs that enslaved people had for free. But the one thing they had was their whiteness, and that's why they give them a crime
Yep.
or two. They make them,
Mm.
and they made them the what are they called? The people who worked on the plantations, um,
Oh, the
the
foreman.
foremans, which we still use those terms today, right? We still use the term foreman today. Um, and now you see, I don't see a lot of, like, I try to look at the people that are in these ICE videos, and not
Mm.
a lot of minorities out there. I'm sure there are some, because there always are some. But the fact that they're
Yeah.
paying them, $50,000, sign on bonus,
Yeah.
$25,000, or how much? How much are they paying? $6,000 a week, $25,000 a month, plus student loan
Bananas.
forgiveness. That's $300,000 a year.
Yeah.
Be a state sanctioned kidnapper
Yeah.
of day laborers from Home Depot. Um, this is what happened. This is what happened right after Reconstruction. People in black communities
Hmm.
disappeared, ended up at the bottom of
Hmm.
Tallahatchie River. Look at your Emmett Tills, and a whole host of other people ended up at the bottom of some of these lakes, ponds, and communities, and just never existed anymore, with zero accountability. So, moving forward, we must understand that history does not always repeat, but it rhymes. Do you have anything further you
It does.
share?
No, but I just love that phrase. But also, I want to say, I just watched a documentary the other night on it. Basically, followed this family as they were deflecting from North Korea,
Mhm.
and it was really really good. But you know, it's it yet again brought up the question in my mind of, so you have, of course, this leader who is positioning himself to be like godlike, but then you have implementing all of his stuff, all these foot soldiers. Why are these foot soldiers doing it? And I think that what you just talked about with the monetization and reward that ICE agents are getting, that's how you create your foot soldiers. That's how you create the people who act against their own people
Mhm.
in the service of one person.
Correct, correct. And I mean, we see in history with the Third Reich. Um,
Yeah.
all those people were working at Auschwitz and all the different camps. They had some they had to meet their maker at some point, and they had to have
Exactly.
sort of conflict I can't necessarily believe that they were all that evil to want to exterminate Jewish people. Just like I can't
Yeah.
believe that all of the IDF soldiers today want to exterminate all of the Gazans. However,
Yeah.
they are all taking part in doing what they've done. And we
They are.
see, because we know we've seen, I don't know how many are left now, but every for years, every so often there'd be some 101-year-old guard
Mm,
from a Nazi death camp that they would catch up to in some Eastern European country, and they would hold him, put him on trial.
yeah.
Those days are coming. It may not
Yeah.
be today or tomorrow, but it's coming because the move for progress, though, like you were talking about, it ebbs and flows. It bends toward the moral arc of the universe. Who said that? Give me that quote. Who said that? Yeah.
Is it Einstein?
Justice bends towards the moral arc of the universe. That is a Dr. King quote. Saying that, you know,
Oh,
that
okay.
is a Dr. King quote. Um, it's literally on a wall in Inman Park.
I
Uh,
should have known that one.
Um, but no, like these people are they're gonna have to face judgment someday.
But there's a certain level of like brainwashedness that makes clashed with, I mean, not clashed with, but in combination with, I think, a subconscious need to believe in the brainwashedness in order to be a concentration camp employee, in order to be an IDF soldier, in order to be a North Korean soldier, like, and so that once the situation has passed, only then do people look back and they're like, oh, that was fucked what I was doing.
Yeah, but it's too late. You've already been doing it.
It's too late.
So I mean,
Mhm.
to be continued, right?
Yeah, great. This was so good. I feel like uh it's like a best of list. I like how you broke it down and was like, let me show you these exact
Yeah, yeah.
parallels in
It's
several
really, it's
ways.
really interesting. So for those out there that love this content and want more, feel free to drop us a line, send us an email. What's the email address, Jennifer?
Hindsightlisten@gmail.com.
Yeah, we
You can like, subscribe, share, DM us.
all of that, and we will be up on all the platforms. And yeah, share it with your peoples. And we appreciate you tuning
Awesome.
into us today. So this is Hindsight, where when you know better, you do better.
You do better. Thanks again.